Alrighty, so this is season 2 of the Muster Station. On this episode, we're going to be talking about sexism in the marine industry. So there's a pretty big issue that's been reported of a vessel that's operating in the Arctic. It's a Russian vessel that's operating on the Mosaic mission, which is a global warming research mission to study the Arctic and the melting of the polar caps. The name of the vessel is, let me butcher it real hard, it's like Adakmik Fedorov.
It's Academic Fedorov.
Academic Fedorov is, they take a whole bunch of like PhD students from around the world, they bring them onto the vessel for 6 weeks, and they'll study the Arctic. I think it's a 10-month-long voyage that they've endured on. They basically just float around the Arctic, studying as much as they can while they're there. So there was a clothing policy that came out that basically prohibited passengers from wearing thermal underwear because it was a safety issue. After this came out, there was a bigger clothing policy that came out, basically saying that there was no hot pants allowed on the vessel. There was no leggings, there was no shorts, there was no crop tops, anything like that. And it basically came across as they needed to do this to keep the boat safe and keep the women on the vessel safe from the men. So instead of punishing the men for what they were doing, they just said, well, it's the women's fault for dressing the way they are.
Where is this boat again? The Arctic?
So it's in the Arctic, as far as I know right now. It's supporting another vessel that I'm not sure the name of.
It's kind of got like researchers and like students on it. It's where they're kind of doing like their work terms. I don't think they're actually like marine students.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure they're like environmental.
They're not actually marine students. There was one student
There's a couple
from Canada.
Memorial.
Yeah, there was one who studied at Memorial. He was studying polar ice caps or the melting of polar ice caps.
Doing like environmental sciences.
Yeah, maybe environmental sciences, something like that. So it's a bunch of younger university students. You're looking people in their 20s to 30s.
Yeah, they're PhD students.
Yeah.
So most of them are like 25, like 26, like around there.
So it's not just, it's people who aren't really in the marine industry who are working with the marine industry. Obviously, it's a very important subject for them to be doing what they're doing. Sadly, the school that's working with them is the Mosaic School. They're denying all allegations that this policy is sexist. They're basically saying, "Oh, it's always been this policy. This is how it is." But it just came out. It actually came out with 4 reporters who were sent on the vessel for 6 weeks. They were there to report like what the vessel was doing and what they're doing to further research in the Arctic. And basically, the only reports that they came back with were how terrible the conditions on the boat really are.
It's really weird. I mean, it's 2020. It should not be a thing. No.
Yeah.
So was this policy put in just for the fact that they had women wearing this type of clothing, or was this always?
So the policy's like always been like in place, but it was never really like highlighted to them until there was like sexual like assault and harassment cases. So like they had the first meeting, which was no thermal underwear in like common places, so like in the galley or whatever, which kind of makes sense. I mean, it's underwear.
Yeah.
And then the second meeting, which was no leggings, no shorts, no crop tops. They banned some other like athletic clothing. So
Yeah.
like, I think it was like capris or something silly like that. That was only women attending.
Yeah.
The second
At the start of the meeting, they took the 4 reporters into the captain's office, and they sat them down and were like, "All right, we're doing a clothing policy update. There's no pajama pants. Like, you have to look professional on the bridge and stuff." And then they're like, "Oh, and by the way, also no hot pants, no leggings, none of this." So it was like kind of like, yeah, we're changing the policy, but only for you
Just
guys.
for the women.
Yeah, just for the women.
They banned like kind of tight clothing, like in general. So even like a tight sweater, you can't really wear. Which is ridiculous because I mean they're already on the boat. It's not like they can go buy more clothes.
No,
if all they brought is like leggings and like tight sweaters and athletic clothing.
You're already out.
They're on a boat. Like what else would they wear besides athletic clothing?
Something comfortable.
Yeah.
I went on a boat for 3.5 months, and I only brought a couple pairs of shorts and I think 1 pair of jeans. And like
Gym pants are the way to go on the boat.
What else? Like, you don't bring more than you need, and you
Yeah.
don't expect being told that you can't wear the clothes you bring. So they ended up only having like one pair of jeans that they could wear out into public spaces, which is completely unfair.
I can see a reason why they would ban them if you were going out on deck. Now,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially
but
if
if
you're
you're in your
renting.
common areas, such as the galley or just walking down the halls,
It
I mean,
mentioned
it's-
nothing
it's-
about people going on deck in unsafe clothing. I mean, obviously they're in the Arctic, there's freezing spray, there's high winds, there's big waves. It's dangerous up there. You don't want to be on deck in shorts and a t-shirt. They're not going to be out there.
no
anyways.
no
No
gender
one's
wants to do
gonna-
that.
Nobody's gonna.
Yeah.
But all the things that mentioned were saying like in common areas, in the galley, in the rec room, on the bridge, and stuff like that. And it just really seemed like it was signaling out people. I mean, it's like,
I don't understand
Yeah.
why they're trying to police you like on your time off.
yeah,
Like if it's
even-
on your downtime, I understand you have to keep like a certain level of like professionalism, but like just because you put leggings on doesn't mean you're unprofessional.
but like,
Damn, I wish I could wear leggings.
I mean, if you look at if this was in public or not on a vessel, if say we were in class or not in class, we were at school and somebody had sexual assault or harassment charges put against them.
Or
They-
allegations.
Allegations,
Yeah.
sorry. They've been like, oh well, it's the dude's fault. You should just not look like that. They would go to the dude and be like, hey, you're off school property. That's it. And I don't know why they can't. I mean, maybe they're out at sea, they can't come home right away and get them off the vessel. But you know, if it's such an issue that they're unsafe and they have to,
Like if
you
they're
know,
posing a threat to other people, they
Yeah.
shouldn't be on the vessel.
so they can bring
Yeah.
the vessel
Like-
home and recrew it. There also was another thing saying that they had to end up changing people's shift work so that they wouldn't come in contact with a certain group of people.
Yeah.
So certain people worked at certain times, and other people worked at other times, just so they wouldn't come in contact because I guess they couldn't control themselves. In the
Yes.
presence
This is
of
some
women.
high school level
Yeah.
freaking
Yeah, it's
policing here because
some of the men,
you're wearing spaghetti straps. We don't want the boys looking at them and being distracted during grade 12 math class, do we?
yeah, like some of the men were told that they can't have contact with like other women. Like they're literally just saying like, "Oh, don't do that again." Like they're not actually being punished for it. I don't understand why the women have to like change what they're doing on their downtime just because the men can't control themselves for that.
And not just the fact that it's changing like what they can wear every day, but I don't know about you, but if I was a female in the industry and all of a sudden this happened, I wouldn't feel comfortable working anymore. I'd always be
Yeah.
nervous while I'm at work. And if you're in charge of a vessel and you're constantly thinking that in the back of your mind that something might happen, that's when an accident's going to happen because you're
Thinking about other
so
things.
concentrated on something else that you're not gonna pay attention to the real issue. And the Arctic's a dangerous place to sail. There's icebergs, there's big waves, like it's just
You can't
not a
take
place
chances
Yeah,
there,
it's just not
yeah.
a place to mess with like that. Like one of the biggest things about like accidents are like 70% or 80% human error. And this is just
8%.
pushing an accident to happen. Also, it's just not a nice environment to work in. I wouldn't want to work on that vessel. If I was working for this company, I would probably quit myself because quit. It's not standards that I would want to work with. I wouldn't support it.
As a woman, I wouldn't feel comfortable being on the ship, and if I was a man, I would also not feel comfortable just like with like how they're like upholding their values. Like that's just not what I want to stand for.
Yeah, so I looked into some studies. Obviously, this sexism in the marine industry is big. I saw some studies involving sexism in the science field. So roughly 50% of the jobs in sciences are held by men and 50% of women 50% of men have them and 50% of women have them. Which sounds good until you realize that only 26% of the jobs are actually regarding the study that the woman is like in. So most of them are just like internships that the women are working in. They're not actually working in like a high position in their job. So like 70% of the positions actually in like scientific studies are all men. So there's a huge group of women in science who are just like working hard constantly but are just like working underneath in the ground, not actually doing what they've like trained for. It's like having like I think one of the people on this vessel was a glaciologist. It's like having her as a deckhand. She's working in the science, but she's not actually doing her job.
Yeah, they're working for things they're like overqualified.
Yeah.
Got something to say, Rainier? You've been quiet this whole time.
Just to bring back a point earlier about being on the boat and not having that kind of behavior. It shouldn't be anywhere really. Back in Dubai, there's this thing in my high school called Duke of Edinburgh, where they take you out hiking through the wilderness, and I went with a couple of classmates and did that with the school, and the teachers had a similar comment to all the girls in my class, telling them you should wear a jacket in the middle of the desert because your shoulders, and it wasn't like shoulders were even open, they were wearing sleeves. But the teacher said, for your safety's sake, you should wear a jumper or something while hiking through the deserts, and it's like 40 degrees outside, 40 degrees Celsius outside. And they thought the teachers were crazy, so we just went on the hike anyway. And of course, it's too hot to wear a jumper. And sure as anything, we're walking through there, and it's like at least 2 hours drive from civilization. And every guy we pass is looking at the girls in my group as if it's the first time they ever saw someone walking by. And you see them follow. So then there's me and a couple of my friends having to stick close because we knew something was going to happen if we weren't there. And that shouldn't be a thing, especially in 2020. It shouldn't be.
I just don't understand how this is tolerated so much. They're just like, all they do is slap the guy in the wrist.
And they're putting
Of
up
course,
policies like that.
This summer I was on
Yeah.
the beach, like just like walking wearing a bikini, and this old guy's looking at me. He's just following me. So I was like I looked right back at him. It was like he wasn't gonna stop, and he wasn't even trying to hide it. It's like he wasn't even ashamed to be like gawking at me. And
Yeah.
I mean, I don't look very old. And like
He thought you were cute.
I didn't think his 60-year-old wrinkly man was cute. Like, it's
That's
people,
fair
like,
enough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just
that's
don't
that's not
understand that
right.
they're ashamed. I was looking at another study because I was kind of skimming it at lunchtime, and almost 50% of female seafarers in lower ranks, so like cadets or like 4th engineers or 3rd mates, almost 50% of them have been sexually harassed or assaulted. That's so many, and that's like juniors. Like they're like 18 to like 20. Shut up.
It was like,
No, that's it.
But on one of the ships I was on last summer, the chief mate was a female. She could throw anything back at any guy. Like, she was just shooting the shit with the boys one day, and they were like, they said something as a joke, and she said, you know, you've had more. No, you've had more dick than I have. So how about you piss off? So it's kind of not right that it's happening, but it's how you deal with it is. Don't get me wrong.
No. Yeah.
But how you go about stopping it.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Because I think you should go to your higher ups and say, hey, this is happening. But at the same time, you should make it look like it doesn't bother you and kind of make it as a joke. Because if it's a joke compared to them knowing that you're telling somebody, don't keep doing it. It's the same.
I mean, most of these
Bullying. Bullying is.
most of these guys, if you tell them to fuck off right back at them, they won't say a word.
Yeah.
There was a guy on my boat, and I mean, I'm a young kid who doesn't know much about the marine industry working on the boat. And I was told that this is some ignorant asshole. He's like 70-year-old. He's not a nice dude. And like, you'll be mean to you the whole time. And like, I got along with him great. He knew his stuff. He's been on the boat for like 30 or 40 years. Like, since he was 16. I didn't bullshit him that I knew stuff that I didn't know, and he didn't bullshit me. Every morning I saw him, I told him to fuck off, he told me to fuck off, and we went on with our day.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's a different story than being told that you're not allowed wearing clothing.
Yeah.
The same study I saw where like 50% of them had experienced like a sexual crime. Only 7% of male seafarers thought that sexual harassment and assault was the problem. And this was like,
It was
This is
2014.
this is in 2014.
So that's 6 years ago, but that's
That's
still a leap.
That's
Yeah.
still an issue.
That's not like the
I really don't understand why we still have all these. I guess I'll say these old farts who work on these boats who still think the old way.
grade.
Like if they're
Yeah.
gonna act like that, they don't belong.
Like it was wrong then and it was wrong now, but like people are like just coming out in the last like 10, like 15 years and they're being like, hey, there has to be a stop to this. It's not right.
But like this was like a thing like 10 years ago in like land jobs, and they're like, hey, we can't do this. But the marine industry is like, oh, you can't control a man when he doesn't have sex for 8 months on a boat. He's a wild animal. Like then he should live in the wild. Like he shouldn't have rights of being working on the boat.
If you know you're going out for that long, there's means to not. I'm not gonna say what, but it's very much implied here that you have internet connection and you have a hard drive.
Do what you gotta do.
It's not the birthright of a man to be able to have a woman like the way he wants. It's
No.
Everybody should have. I mean,
If you're like a higher ranking officer over
Yeah.
a junior cadet, like
and they don't really say in
that's
this.
an abuse of power.
Mm.
Even if they're not using it, it is an abuse of
Yeah,
power.
they don't really say who really
I
who
think
these
it said
allegations
There was
are
an
towards.
electrical technician or
But
something.
being a younger person on a boat who's just coming in, you're almost scared to say something back to your superiors. Like you're so worried that they're just gonna like put a bad word out for you that you kind of have to just take the cold shoulder sometimes and just be like, oh, whatever, I'll just live another day. But with harassment, like you just
But with something like that,
it just shouldn't happen.
not with
It's
something like
just so
that.
much,
But-
even so much harder to speak up about that because like it might be your first time out about. You don't want to like ruin
Yeah.
your chances of ever getting a job again
Yeah,
or like
but
ruin your reputation.
This comes back to how companies support how company supports you on a vessel. I know as when I went on my vessel 2 summers ago, I first went to an orientation at the head office of the company, and through that whole thing, we got contacted with somebody in the company who just deals with cadets, and her whole purpose was, if you need anything at all, just email me. Feel free about anything. You don't have to go to somebody above you, because they understand that that's uncomfortable going to your superiors when you're a cadet. And through the whole way, she like sent out emails about how we were doing and stuff, and it made me feel more comfortable on a boat, knowing that I had somewhere outside of the boat that wouldn't like make me look different on the boat, wouldn't make me look like I was just a weak kid. On the boat, there's a lot of being tough and grit and like, but they don't really deal with like that. There's like mental illness on the boat. And the captains are just like, oh, live another day, kid. That's what I heard a lot of them was like. But
Same person that says that has already gone through 3 divorces.
well, you say that, and my captain was a very great man. He had gone through a couple divorces, but surprisingly, I was walking up the stairs one day to the bridge, and he was walking down the gallery. And he stopped me and brought me to one of the decks, and he was like, "Kid, are you doing okay? You look different today." He's like, "You know what, kid? If you need anything, I'm in my cabin. Just come talk to me. No problem." And for the rest of the time, that was like 2 weeks in, so I was probably feeling a little homesick. The rest of the time on the boat, I was like, this is where I need to be. This is the boat for me. Because he did one little thing, stopping me on the stairs and saying, "You need any help?" But like these women, all they can go to are the other women, because the men are obviously all bad, except for maybe the captain, who was also talking to them about the policy. But he's just telling them the policy how it is, so he's just as bad.
Yeah,
in my eyes.
I think it really does fall back on him the most. Like, obviously, it is the men's responsibility. It is whoever is committing the sexual harassment and assault.
But,
it falls
yeah.
on them, but ultimately, it does fall on the
It
company.
falls
to deal
on the
with.
company and on the captain, how he like lets his vessel operate, and he's letting this happen. He doesn't really seem like he's doing anything towards this.
He doesn't really seem like he's like taking it seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.